Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
I am ready for ready.
All right, so I want to talk about tonight. I want to talk about stochastic terrorism, because I made the Scholastic, I keep wanting to call it Scotastic. So I may do that accidentally a couple times on this episode. I just thought it was like timing-wise, it was important that we talk about it because, there's a lot about free speech going on the last few weeks. A lot of different things coming up with free speech. And I think that, free speech, one of the things that we have to deal with is like, where does free speech end? And there's the obvious and old thing of you can't scream fire in a theater.
But you can. You certainly can. If it's in the script, of course you can.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. That's funny because it's an example. You can't do this, and you can under the right circumstances.
Yeah.
It's not that
the theater's on fire.
Yeah. I mean, there are times. That's the classic Inglourious Basterds, right? Where the guy who made the original Inglourious Basterds said he wanted to be able to yell fire in the theater at the end of the movie.
Nice.
And because but he did, but it was in a different context than in his movie.
Yeah. So there are obvious exceptions, and so I thought I would talk about what is kind of gray area. It's not really gray area. I think that unfortunately this is somewhat largely covered by the free speech. By the First Amendment, but it is something that.
Oh yeah, when I was a kid, we had that thing the First Amendment. We used to have that.
Yeah, well, Jimmy Kimmel's back. I don't know if you saw in the last couple hours the people. Enough people canceled Disney Plus and stuff that they saw a $4 billion.
Yeah, we were part of that $4 billion,
and they rehired him. We were going to be if it had taken a couple hours longer. I just hadn't gotten around to it. But it's good. It's good that happened. But so stochastic terrorism is, like I said, kind of that gray area. So let's talk about what stochastic terrorism is. Essentially, it is. I wrote the definition down. So I didn't know where the word stochastic came from to start off with. So I wrote down the stochastic is a word meaning randomly determined, having a random probability distribution or pattern that may be analyzed statistically but may not be predicted precisely. And then
nothing to do with the usage in this case.
Vaguely it does.
Yeah.
Vaguely it does. So stochastic terrorism is the public vilification of a person or group through mass media, which makes ideologically motivated violence against them statistically probable, but not individually unpredictable. The term, which combines the statistical concept of that random side of things with terrorism, describes a process that can incite random or lone wolf attacks while allowing the instigator to remain plausible deniability.
Yeah. So when you said you wanted to talk about this, I went to my best friend, the cool buddy voice of Copilot, and I asked him summarize stochastic terrorism for me, and he was in his cool voice. Stochastic terrorism is when public figures use vague or coded language to incite violence indirectly. They don't explicitly call for violence, but their rhetoric makes it more probable. The term stochastic refers to the randomness of these events. It's about hate speech that inspires violence without a direct command. And I was like, that's a great description. So I said, are there any classic examples? And he goes, the term gained traction post-2016 with certain political rhetoric being tied to violent actions. Classic examples are tricky due to the indirect nature, but think of instances where the violent outcomes followed inflammatory or divisive speech. The randomness of the events makes it hard to pin down specific precedents. And all I could think was, that sounds like climate crisis. So they go, we can't say this hurricane was caused by climate change.
Yeah.
But it's exactly what we would expect to happen due to climate change. Like, we can't say this violent act was because the person said this thing the week before that incited it. But it's just what you think would happen. Could be.
Yeah. So to me, I put this in the notes. I don't know if you've seen it. You said you hadn't seen the notes. To me, stochastic terrorism, when you think about it, when you think about someone who has a big platform and they're, it's almost like those traditional like scenes in almost like a comedy where someone wants to buy drugs, but they don't really know how to go about doing that, and they don't want to get in trouble, so they like use like language that is deniable while trying to get what they want out of it. So it's like, hey, I'm looking for some party favors. I'm looking for, like, it's like, what is the key? What are the key phrases that allow me to get what I want while also maintaining
You
legal?
can't arrest me. I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
ask you to
and
be a prostitute. I
I
want to go
didn't.
around the world.
Yeah, I want to experience Greek. Did you see Peacemaker this week?
Not yet. No, I know
Oh,
because
sorry.
we were
It's
out of
like
town.
it's like a micro spoiler. Uh,
Joseph and I watched Peacemaker together, so I'm behind this week because we were out of town on Thursday. So
yeah. So anyway, but like, yeah. So like, it's this idea of like, we can use some words that keep us from being technically guilty, but are, and and so I wrote down some things that I wanted to talk about, and one of those things being like, how do we differentiate between you know tra- traditional stochastic terrorism and like irresponsible language, because I don't want to say that like everything that accidentally causes like I think that there has to be a level of intent here for it to rise to the occasion. So it's not just like if I say something stupid and it ends up causing a problem. It's I think a intentionality to it, as well as a repetition. So like people will say dumb shit in the heat of the moment. There was an example. It was on Piers Morgan. Someone was calling out Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks and saying that he called for Charlie Kirk to be a martyr. And he's like, that clip is from like 2018. And he said, he always wants to act like a martyr. That's not the same. And he goes, and I'll use that like word one time. Someone called me out on it and I didn't do it again. That's not the same as calling for violence. You
yeah,
know what I
it
mean?
reminds me of every sexual harassment training we've ever had, and the Creator Accountability Network training that we had, where things have to be, or ideally are repeated. Because if it's one incident, that was a bad thing. Don't do it. Repeated, that's a trend that makes it harassment.
Right.
That makes it potential. I mean, you could do it one thing. I mean, if you were to say
Yeah.
get up in front of all your followers and say, "Let's march right down to the Capitol and stop them, and I'll be right behind you." Like you could say, "Well, you didn't call for you to break the windows down and hit people with flagpoles and use bear spray," but even though you only spoke once, that's pretty potential there.
Yeah. It's fun that you like now you've seen the notes and you know that January 6th is on my
Well, it's
on my
I'd also had asked Copilot. I forced it to give
yeah.
me some examples, and it gave me that as one.
Yeah. So I did so yeah, January 6th is a good example. I think that there's a couple that I want to say are more specific and clear. So to get the one that I think of when I think of this idea is I don't are you familiar with Dr. Tiller in that case?
No,
Okay.
summarize.
And I apologize because I don't remember Dr. Tiller's first name. Bill O'Reilly used to refer to this
Now I
abortion
remember. Now I know what you're
providing
talking about.
doctor
Dr.
called
Death.
Dr. Tiller, and he would call him Dr. Death or Dr. Tiller, the baby killer. And he did segments on him extremely regularly, and he would always refer to him as either Dr. Death or Dr. Tiller, the baby killer. And Dr. Tiller was killed for providing abortions. Now, I don't know much of the detail, of whether or not that was like his whole job, or like is he the one abortion provider in a state? I didn't know all that, but I've heard of I've heard that used quite a bit as an example, and I think it's to me the most clear cut example of it because he did it repeatedly. He he very clearly didn't give a shit about the results. And I I don't know whether or not he showed any remorse afterwards, even if it was fake remorse. I mean, it's Bill O'Reilly, so I don't expect real remorse. But yeah, so that's the number one clearest example, and it is, and I think it's a really good example also because right now I feel like you're putting in a bunch of very good examples too, but I think that we have so much, like in this moment, in the last 6 weeks or so, even before the Charlie Kirk assassination, there was so many examples of things being, like, oh, it was just free speech, blah blah blah, and like it's kind of hard to nail down. That's kind of the whole point of it, and I think that Bill O'Reilly talking about, this is the guy, who, and I think they posted pictures of him, and like that is there is no better example. There's no clearer cut, moment of like, oh shit, this is a guy who is putting it out there to rabid fans who've had years of priming to think that these people are killers. And how do you, if you're a pro death penalty and you're on the pro death penalty network, like Fox News is more pro death penalty than I would have guessed any liberal news. How your followers are thinking that way, and then all of a sudden you're referring to this guy as a killer of the most innocent among us, babies. Not that I think they were babies,
But the rhetoric you're using is this person is a unrepentant murderer who no one is stopping.
Yep.
You got to feel like there's a chance someone in your leadership is going to say, "You're telling me to be the hero who steps up and stops them."
Yeah, and there's plenty of examples where you wrote Alex Jones, and I can't think of a specific example, but I believe I've seen Alex Jones specifically do it, where these people come out and talk about, they'll rile up their base, and someone needs to fix this problem. Someone needs to do something peacefully, of course.
Well, the example
they add in after they've spent minutes riling. They go with words like, and that doesn't really undo the riling and the call. Like it is, that is only a disclaimer. That's like when they put like on the back of an ATV, not for two. This is not for two people to use at the same time, but there's a butt seat for the second person, and you're like, all right, so we can infer, but you're not liable at the moment because you threw in that little disclaimer.
Yeah, there's a term, and I can't remember the name, but I'm saying that for using that technique of like saying, I think all people from the planet Venus need to be, forcibly removed from our planet. And it's like, I mean, Venetian food is really good, so they brought some good culture to us, and some of the things Venetians do, they do jobs other people want to do, so they're really good. But so really, they're a good part of our culture. But then they reference that first sentence over and over again, repeatedly somewhere else. And then when you say, "Hey, you're anti-Venusian," they're like, "No, remember all these things?" And they take the other four sentences. That's the context. You need the full context, but they never reference the full context in the rest of their rhetoric. They just put that there to protect themselves from the first sentence.
That exact
and
thing
I'm
you're
saying
talking about.
That example, so I don't get my talk show removed from me, because I could think of another example of someone who did that, but I'm not supposed to talk about that person.
That's what I was just going to say. I saw someone breaking down
our podcast.
Yeah,
because I know someone else who said he didn't talk about the planet Venus, but similar type stuff.
And I suspect that if we got canceled, no one's going to.
The ACLU is not going to come running to help.
Well, nobody's getting. It's not going to do $4 billion worth of damage to Spotify or YouTube
or Chocolate Diamond.
Chocolate Diamond will never be a $4 billion company.
Adam cancels us, motherfucking partner.
He can't outvote us. I have 50 and you have 25. You two would need to band together. He bought
up a lot of stock through various shell corporations and some loans. It's very complicated. You probably wouldn't understand it. I like Christopher Nolan.
So I did want to talk about before we get into like how to deal with it. I wanted to come up with bring up a couple of other examples because I also want, I think there is some accusation on the right against us for doing this kind of thing. I think that
people have been protesting, talking about the big stuff.
not
And if you
us.
want to protest, the place where we'll see it best is if you go to patreon.com/talking about the big stuff and become a patron at the $1, $3, $5, or $10 or $50 level. We will notice your comments there more than anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you want to talk about our stochastic terrorism, please,
sarcastic terrorism,
become a patron and talk about it there.
No. The right accuses the left of stochastic terrorism, and the Charlie Kirk thing. When it was believed at first that it was a leftist, now it's kind of up in the air a little bit, I guess, as to who. It doesn't.
I mean, what's funny is, does it really make a difference what the person's individual shit was? He didn't belong to an organization that said, "Go remove provocateurs from the world."
Right. But the first thing that we were hearing was, you call us Nazis all the time, and you don't expect this to happen. Well, so that's an accusation of stochastic terrorism. And so we are accused of it, even though, and which is interesting because it also shows that they're aware that it is a thing. So why does my light flash like that? I think it's this camera. I think I pulled the cord or something. Anyway, so it shows that they're aware that that's a concept. So like if we're vilifying trans people or immigrants or anything else, like, that's something that's going to happen. I made a little video days after that incident about that, so I don't have to retread it. But I think that there is the one that I saw that I think is potentially, I Googled examples of left wing, and I kept it to America because I don't know that much about outside America politics.
Don't know that much about inside America politics. Imagine how little we know about outside.
Yeah. And so the one that came up that I was like, oh, that is a good example or a decent example is the 2016 Dallas police shooting. There were some police officers shot in Dallas, and that was, in the wake of the original set of, I don't think we had defund the police. I don't think was a slogan yet, but it was in the wake
but all
of
cops are bastards was out there.
Yeah. So, it was an accusation that had some basis in reality. Whether you agree with it or not is up in the air, and I don't know how much there was specific examples of.
But I don't think we have to defend the fact that lots of negative sentiment about police officers who shoot unarmed people.
Yeah,
but it's what I like is when the accusation is, "Hey, that person shot a cop because you pointed out how cops kill people all the time." Like he wouldn't have done it just from the news that cops were killing people, but when you said cops are bad for killing people, that's what put him over the edge. That's what's funny about some of the accusations is like when there's some accusations that are, Alex Jones made up Pizzagate out of whole cloth. A pizzeria that does not have a basement has child pornography going on in the basement that doesn't exist.
To be clear, it was made up whole cloth. Is Alex Jones the one who made it up? Because he will. Well, I don't. Well, we're not big enough to get sued.
So
someone made.
Some people said, "Oh, when you look at these transcripts, they ordered pizza from this particular pizzeria." What they meant when they said that is they were ordering children to rape. That's what ordering pizza means. It means getting children. And so he started talking about the pizzeria and saying, in the basement, they have this thing. We all know about it. And he made up the whole stories about how we know it's true and we know they're down there and the cops won't do anything about it because the Democrats are too powerful, so they let it go on.
Yeah.
And so, not surprising. And I'm saying, so he and his ilk, we won't get all to Alex, but he and his ilk spread that. So not surprising that somewhere in the world, happened to be North Carolina, yay us, someone, a father of children, a husband, packed up his guns and said, I have to go save those children, and drove to D.C. to enter into a pizzeria that had no basement to stop them from a crime that wasn't happening. So that's people say, oh, it's the fault. That's one. So that's the example of the left saying it's the fault of Knowledge Fight and Alex Jones and other people on the right spreading.
Infowars, Knowledge Fight are the good
Knowledge
guys.
Fight's the good guy. Infowars. No, Knowledge Fight's the good podcast. Infowars. I don't listen to either one of them. So
I can't listen.
that's their fault for spreading these rumors, and the right's fault for spreading these lies.
Yeah.
That's one version of the accusation of stochastic terrorism. And then the other side is cops were murdering people, and you talked about it, and it's your talking about it that
Fair.
made people take action. Like,
That's
it's
fair.
a very different situation.
We're acting like Nazis, and you're calling us Nazis.
Yeah. Like, why do you call the racist racist? It's not polite to call people racist.
Yeah.
But it's better. It's okay to be one.
Yeah.
I just find that seems to be like the life of synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh, and the guy had all these social media things about the migrant caravans, which didn't exist. It was a made up thing by the right. That's different than, oh, you did this because people pointed out that this guy's was guilty of horrible hate speech and was trying to create stochastic terrorism, and just it happened to him instead of to the people he was targeting with his rhetoric.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about how we can combat scholastic
Stop
terrorism.
shooting people. Stop having guns. No more fucking guns. Then we don't have to worry about this shit anymore. Believe all the garbage you want to believe, but don't own a fucking gun. I solved it.
That's a great option. But let's talk about how we can hopefully fight back in a different way in case that one doesn't work, since it hasn't worked so far. So I Googled this again.
You're shooting holes in my solution of not shooting holes in things.
Hey. I think that's a great solution.
Don't target me, man.
Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. I don't mean to go off, but I saw a clip of Trump last night. Was it last night at the Charlie Kirk funeral, or the night before? Whatever night it was. And he was talking about. I'm sure you heard about this. He's talking about how they pretty much figured out autism. Did you hear about that or no?
No. We tried to avoid news the entire weekend. And
okay,
yeah.
So Trump came out on.
Was it the Tylenol thing? Which I knew this is what they were going to say.
They hadn't. He said tomorrow night, which I think is tonight. Tomorrow night we're going to let you know what it is, but we've pretty much figured out autism, like what causes it, how we can treat it. Also, I hope they say Tylenol, and I hope Tylenol sues them instead of acetaminophen, because they don't know how to pronounce acetaminophen.
Right.
But as far as the autism thing, it sounded super duper Final Solution, like the way that it was worded, and I was like, "Oh,
it's the only book he reads."
Yeah, well, hopefully Elon is there when to say hey, I'm not on board with that.
It's my shtick. Yeah.
All right, so
I will do an episode on acetaminophen if that's what they end up saying. That'll be next week's conversation topic.
Okay.
What an attack on women! Here's the one medicine a woman with fever and pains can take during pregnancy, and we're going to tell you, ooh, fearmonger, don't take the one medicine you can take.
Yeah.
Anyway, you were saying that you wanted to use violence to stop stochastic terrorism.
Yeah, no, I want to. So I Googled, because I don't know how to fight this. And it is that thing of there's enough of a loophole in it that we got to figure out good ways. So that when I Googled it, it says you got to challenge the sources that spread the harmful rhetoric. So it says we should call for the accountability of public figures. We have been doing that. I don't think that we're in a climate where that is going to be effective, unfortunately. Boycott platforms that profit from hate. I don't know. I mean, I think with the Jimmy Kimmel thing,
to that, yeah,
we showed that boycotts can be effective. But it has to be real strong and real clear to do that.
Yeah, and the thing is, the people who, for the most part, were worried about taking this into their own hands are the people who like those platforms, and they don't believe you when they say those platforms are spreading hate.
Yeah. So I think that it
I'm talking about
becomes
Fox News, everybody. I'm talking about Fox.
yeah.
We on the left already don't watch Fox. We're already not their audience. How much more can we boycott them?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to holding people accountable and trying to push back on it, I think that the way that I think is best at this point, from the little bit like that we haven't been doing already, is to go back to your example of if you and I forget you used a fake example to avoid using a real example to get us canceled.
Send
The
the Venusians
immigrants
off the
and
planet.
yes,
Send them back to Venus.
If every time someone uses that trick, we need to be like, hey, you can't, we get that you're couching a little compliment in a whole insult sandwich, and then you're not coming back to the compliment. And like that's not going to get you off the hook. But we need to say, we need to call that out and be like, you can't just be like, hey, all this group of people are terrible, evil, blah blah blah, and I like their food, but they need to die. Like that's we need to call it out and be like, I you don't get to couch things with one tiny little spoonful of sugar. It does not make this medicine go down. And that's I think one of the holes that we need to start. We need to start figuring out the specific tactics and exposing the specific tactics and confronting the specific tactics as best as possible. Because I think it's not enough, and it has been shown to be not enough, to say, hey, you said a racist thing, here's a clip of you saying a racist thing, because they always say it's taken out of context. And say the context doesn't, here's the full context, and say like you could show those two sentences that we're not going to mention specifically, and say the second sentence is only mentioned that one time. The rest of it's reiterated over and over and over again. It does not get canceled by the first thing. So that's one way of kind of calling it out and calling attention to it, saying like it will point out to people who are unsure, or in the middle, to like people who aren't diving in all the time on this shit, which unfortunately is clearly the case in a lot of these situations. They're like, I don't know, I had never heard of this person before, but he said something I liked, so it must be a good guy. He likes Jesus. And so, like we're getting, when we're dealing with uninformed people, how do we deal with that? And I think the way is to show like this is the full context, and this is 5% of what he said, and 95% was hateful. The 5% doesn't offset the 95. So that's the first thing, that I think we can actually improve on those first couple bullet points that are here. Google says that advocating for platform reform is a good thing. It's another thing that we've been working on. It's difficult to really push because, again, there's this plausible deniability here. So, and then the last bullet point on this, under the challenging the sources, is supporting responsible journalism, which, we was that 2 weeks ago that we talked about, like money in journalism, and trying to like bolster journalism. Money. Like we need to figure out how to.
And who does that go back to? Our dear friend Ronald Reagan, who got rid of the fairness doctrine.
Yeah.
Made news a profit center instead of a service to the public.
Yep. So that's the first thing. And after challenging it, I like the second bullet point better, or the second section better, which is empowering individuals and communities. I do think we need to figure out how to promote media literacy, because it's clear when you talk to anybody, like, and it is not just conservatives. I talk to liberal people, and I'm like,
media literacy is terrible.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing, like, I think about one of my favorite podcasts. I don't know if you listen to Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, but it's one of the originals. It's an OG podcast. It goes back to before they were podcasts, like they became a podcast, having already existing. On Patreon, they've got like almost 8,000 patrons. So they're like us. They're about the same size we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is,
So
like they're one of the best known podcasts. They have more than 1,000 episodes in the can, right? And they are well known. They're speakers all. They're published. They have books published from the podcast, and they only have 7,500 paid listeners. I have no idea how many free listeners they have, but I'm one of them. But I don't know how many they have. And they talk about media literacy all the time. Their entire podcast is about skepticism and about critical thinking. And it's clear that our country has no concept overall of critical thinking, and media literacy is part of that. They talk about studies all the time that show how bad people's media literacy is. All of us, that you have a tendency to believe what you want to believe and challenge what you want to challenge, but not look it up and check, or not look at multiple sources. And it's not even a matter of, well, I listen to Fox and I listen to MSNBC. Listening to two skewed things you don't average it and get the truth. Like, that's not a way to find the truth. That just lets you know what biased people are saying. Like, that's not truth finding. And truth finding is hard, and skepticism is hard. I mean, and it doesn't win you friends. Like, when you're with your friend circle and someone says something, you go, but we don't really know. Nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I think critical thinking, overarching media literacy, yes, but even overarching critical thinking, including media literacy, is the thing we are missing most in this country that would get rid of the most problems. Okay, separation of church and state would be wonderful too. But on individual levels, if people had critical thinking skills, this would be a very different world.
Yeah. It's funny. I was listening to something today that made me come up with a topic that I want to talk about in the next couple weeks, which is religion priming us to fall for dumb shit? Obviously. But they were talking about how the Charlie Kirk funeral was being used as like a rally.
Careful, and that's what Jimmy said.
It was being used as a rally. I don't care. I'm not saying anything about him.
Like I said, the other thing is he didn't either. He just said the right is using the death as a stepping stone. And and then he talked about Trump for 20 minutes, and that's what got him in trouble. But apparently, he's okay. I explained real fast. This is really funny. I got tagged by him in a thread, in Threads, because and it says, "Please stop messaging me. I have no comment at this time." And then below it says, "Just kidding. I'm so grateful for the literal thousands of supportive messages I've received. This community is incredible. Please keep the comments in this thread so I can be sure to properly respond. Too many inbox messages already." But that was great. And it's just in time. He's back in time for the rapture, so that's great.
Yep.
So I'm not worried about getting fired anymore from us.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Adam.
So what I was gonna say is that we, as far as it's religion is priming us in a lot of these ways. I think that like it is priming us in, critical thinking and religion don't typically go hand in hand. That's me being pretty, what do you call it? Diplomatic. They don't typically go hand in hand. And
take from Michael Cole.
And when you have something that's whether it's religion or Fox News or to some extent CNN and whatever, when they have a kind of a vested interest in us not being good at this stuff, that's not helpful either, because if we were all able to critically think and able to to suss out the media landscape better, it would not be good for their bottom line. And so, they're not going to help us with this process. So how do we, solve that is kind of maybe its own whole issue on media literacy. I don't know if you're in the YouTube chat, by the way, but Samwise the Overthinker says there's a server in Minecraft called the Uncensored Library that allows people in countries with skewed media to see news from all around the world.
Are we able to access that? Are we allowed?
For now.
Back when I had cable, thank you, Sammy. Back when we had cable, I used to watch BBC News more than U.S. News because it actually gave world news and what was going on in the world.
Yeah. It's actually funny that you say that because you've cut the cord, right?
No, years ago, a couple of years ago. Yeah. So I don't anymore, but I used to watch it.
I don't think we've had it since we lived in Massachusetts, so it's been 8.5 years. And I was like, that was one of the things that kind of clicked for me with the Jimmy Kimmel thing was I was like, how many people, like, what's the percent? Because they kept saying like, they couldn't have more than 40% of be in more than 40% of American homes. I'm like, I'm assuming they mean people who actually have cable or television, like that aren't, like not televisions, but like service. And I was like, and that number's got to be pretty low, right? Like, so like, is this 40% of that number or 40% of all Americans or, like it's a kind of wild number, but also like to think that they have that much power at this point. Obviously, Disney Plus has a lot of power, too. But that was kind of interesting, like to see, and it's old media versus new media. People who have cable are probably significantly more likely to support or to just lean right because they're older
because they're our grandparents.
Yeah. Or in my case, my parents. Oh my god!
I just thought we were younger than that.
I'm gonna tell. This is a patron story. So, so anyway, but yeah, let's go. Let's keep going with. So the next thing under how we empower individuals and communities, is that we got to increase. We counter violent extremism locally. So if we can counter violent extremism locally, supporting community-based programs that offer early intervention and de-radicalization. Now, you're active in you and your family are active in a lot of local stuff. I'm not aware of, I know that there are religious things for like people coming out of religion to help them.
If you're coming out of religion and need help, contact the Recovering from Religion organization. Recovering from Religion, it's not only national, it's international. They have online people who can chat with you. They have toll-free numbers you can call. Recovering from Religion even has a project for clergy that are recovering from religion, but it's their job and they don't know what to do. Try Recovering from Religion. This is not a paid advertisement. I just support what they do.
Yeah, me too. But is there anything like that and this says early intervention, so this is probably people who are, when we see stuff like, Sarah and I had a long conversation with Logan this week because the guy, whether regardless again of what his political affiliation was, there were memes that they were written on the casings or whatever on the ammunition
from some video game or something that he
was and Logan's a 9-year-old boy who's into memes and into watching YouTube, and we monitor it as much as we can, but how much can you monitor it? So we had a really in-depth conversation with him about like critical thinking. I talked about like some of these things, if they're unchallenged, kind of seem like common sense, but they're not common sense. And I used voter ID, which has always been my like go-to, voter ID. If nobody says any reason why it's a bad thing, sounds like a reasonable thing. And I explained that to him, and he seemed to get it. And like we've been very open and active.
One of the ways I taught my kids critical thinking, was, and media literacy, quite frankly, was, and maybe it's hard to do when you've cut the cord, but this commercial is on YouTube. Is analyzing commercials, especially toy commercials. Whereas I was like, do you think that toy is that much fun? Look how much fun they're having. Do you ever have that much fun with a board game? And kind of, oh, did you notice they said nothing's faster than blah, blah, blah? Does that mean it's the fastest, or is maybe everything the same speed? Because they would have said they were faster if they were faster. And it kind of helped them look for those marketing spins. It's just it's a good place to practice critical thinking.
So that's good, and I'm gonna remember that. But also, what I was gonna say is that Logan's a year away from being in that like prime radicalization in America. What do you call it? Demographic.
Yeah,
10 to 14, I think they say 10 to 14-year-old boys.
Isn't that terrifying? That's the demographic of when they get you.
Yeah, and it's like it's
scary.
Also
when they get you in church, right? Become an altar boy. It's when they try to really get you to engage in your church. I didn't mean that as a joke. I meant that as a serious.
No,
You're not just a kid being dragged by your parents. Like in Judaism, you bar mitzvah at 13. Now you're a man. You're responsible to be part of the temple.
Yeah, and so like the 10 to 14-year-olds, and like I think we know right now, like Andrew Tate is terrible, and there's enough of us that are like cognizant of like, don't listen to Andrew Tate, but for every Andrew Tate, there's a dozen that you've never heard of that are having somewhat the same effect on a lower scale or whatever. And so like, that's why I was trying to talk to Logan and being like, we're going to be really like strong about like, if we hear, what you need, but we also need you to be responsible. And if someone says something that sounds weird, ask us. We're never going to be mad at you for asking us. We want to talk. Or
sounds not weird. If you hear something that you think is important, we should talk about it.
Yeah,
because even if you are like kind of you talked about voter ID, right? If you instinctively agree, like it makes sense to make sure people aren't lying about voting.
Yeah,
like that's not something that sounds weird, but it is something that you should challenge because it sounds important. Maybe it's important. We should have a conversation about it and say, oh, well, there's actually very, very few instances of people lying about who they are to vote. But people having to have ID will mean a lot of people can't vote. Is that worth that trade, really, that people can't vote? Because maybe somebody will lie?
Yeah. And also, when I used that example, I said, and that's actively what they want. They want to make it harder for people to vote. And so, like, that's why it's dangerous. It's not brilliant. Like
I just don't think enough people are doing that you are going to do it, Logan. And our schools are not doing it well. And it's no slam on teachers. Like, I'm sure there are teachers who would like to do that, but they have such set itineraries and set things they have to do and agendas. Like, it's hard for them to say where they used to have flexibility to talk about good citizenship things and smart things. It's hard. I had a teacher who, too late. He did this too late. He's a great teacher, but he did this too late. Not his fault. This is where he taught. He was high school. Senior year of high school, reading 1984? Yeah, reading 1984. He, for a week, made the classroom a totalitarian 1984 classroom. And he did a couple of interesting things. One was like we had to sit straight. Our books had to be straight. And he would say the books always need to be in the right corner of the desk because studies show that's the better place to be. And the next day he's like, why are your books in the right corner? They belong in the left corner. I've told you. All the studies show that it's more organized. Like, he was like switch reality routinely. Yeah. He told us he was going to ask people to turn people in if they talk bad about him during other classes or have their books not neatly stacked in the corner during other classes. And then he never assigned anyone to do it, but like 10 or 15 people came to him privately to turn people in or to say, I'm willing to be one of your spies. And he'd be like, nice for me to know. Like, he never told anyone they were, but people became spies to the government, even though he didn't really ask them to. He lied to us about when our state regents, statewide exams were going to be. So the date was changed and we all just believed him because the authority told us. So we all believed the authority. It was really interesting. I planned to assassinate his fictional leadership. I wouldn't hurt the man. He was great. Me and my friend plotted together, and we brought in water pistols to do it. But first, we sent a threat. I beheaded a puppet that looked like him, and we put red ink all over its neck and left it with a threat. I had one of my neighbors' sister write the threat, so it was in neat handwriting, and we left it in front of his office. But somebody saw Lewis.
This is a huge example of a generation gap between you and me, that you could do that.
So the guy saw Lewis running away, or someone saw Lewis running away and told the teacher that him, but didn't see me. So Lewis was in track after school, and he went over to Lewis. And here's another thing he did. He goes, Lewis, don't come to class tomorrow. Go to the English office. You are an unperson for the rest of the week. And you would just disappear. Like if someone did something he didn't like, he would just disappear you from the classroom, and you weren't allowed to mention that somebody's seat was empty. And so the last day he was doing it, I brought water pistols for me and Lewis, and then Lewis wasn't there. Like, you know, like, oh my God, he's one person. So I get to class, and I'm like, I have the gun in the shoebox, and I'm ready to pull it out. And teacher goes, okay, first announcement. We're done with the experiment. One of my lies was that it would be 5 days long. It was only 4 days long, but you believed me because I told you it was going to be 5 days long. That was one of those. And he was like going to say, "Oh, Eric, go to my office and get the 3 people who are in persons, tell them to come." And I was like, "No, but no!" And I pulled out the water gun. I was going to assassinate you. And he's like, "I know. That's why I got Lewis." And he goes, "And had you done it, had you assassinated me yesterday, I would have had another teacher come in and take my place and be worse today."
That's awesome.
Yeah. That
That's
was a very good teacher. It was a very cool class. And to ask questions during that week, you had to just raise your hand up to like ear level, just quite like, no, ooh, Mr. Cotter. You just raised your hand, and he would go, "You," with no names. And you had to stand up by your desk neatly, push your chair in, and say, "Oh, formidable purveyor of wisdom," and then give your answer. And it's amazing how structured everyone's answer came. Like, he's like, "Why is Winston Smith's name Winston Smith in the book?" And I want to rate, I got up and said, "A formidable purveyor of wisdom." Smith is an everyman name, that showing that he could be anyone. He wasn't anyone important. He was just a regular person. But Winston was the name of Winston Churchill, a great leader at the time the book was written. So clearly a name everyone would associate with politics and about fighting against fascism, which is what the book was about. So it combined those two things, that anyone could be a hero fighting against fascism. But I did it, like, I would have been like, Winston for Winston Churchill and Smith for everyone, like normal class. But it was a fucking mini essay because of the formality of the class, because the trains run on time in fascism. Then you get more formal.
I think, though, if you ran that experiment with the class today, that you would get like a bunch of kids afterwards being like, "Can we go back to that? Because like that's how my parents want me to learn."
He originally had people that called him, I think he had to say like master instead of formidable purveyor of wisdom, until some black parents complained about that, and he was like, "Oh shit, I didn't even think about that. Like, that was not my intent, And that's when he switched to formidable purveyor of wisdom. Nobody knew what formidable or purveyor meant, so like no one's going to complain about that.
Yeah. Do you remember? I want to say I think it was Horatio Sands played Kim Jong Il on SNL. When it was, when he was still the leader of North Korea before he died. And
wait. Horatio Sands was the leader of North Korea?
And they would do this thing where they would say, "Oh, exalted, exuberant," like it was leader, always, like ridiculous. And then they'd be like, "You are wonderful and amazing." And then someone would be like, "That's not a question." And he'd be like, "Shut up. That is my favorite question." So
I'm sure Mr. Sunshine is probably not alive anymore, but I mean, he could be. Maybe he wasn't that old. Maybe he's in his 90s. If he is, God love you. Fake God love you, Stephen Sunshine. You were a great teacher. I really enjoyed you.
So are you aware of any organizations similar to the religious one you were talking about that?
Well, I don't know about recovering, but my I try to do a podcast, right? And my podcast partner did a talk for a skeptical group 2 years ago. In town, the Triangle Skeptics, I think they're called, and so they are trying hard to promote skepticism and critical thinking. I don't know that they would directly associate it with "we're doing it to stop stochastic terrorism," but they're definitely their existence is around
radicalization,
increasing critical analysis and critical thought in the name of skepticism. So there's definitely organizations like them. Hey, if you're in the Triangle, look up Triangle Skeptics. If you're not, Google "skeptics in the pub" and then the name of your city, and and see if part of their national or international, I should say, organization is near you, because their meetups are called Skeptics in the Pub, and it's a great organization to be part of and support.
Yeah. So follow up to that is great for those of us who want to be de-radicalized.
Yeah, but it's the wrong audience because we're already halfway down the path. Yeah.
Right. And so, like, how do we reach the people who are well-intentioned but unaware and will not take that first step because they're in denial, or they think that, you're like, how do we do that?
So I have not given this any thought. But since you ask, the first thing that pops into my, so I think the problem again is education. Like, it doesn't happen in school.
Yeah.
Kids don't learn it, right? And like you
Yeah.
say, 10-year-olds is where you start being at the biggest risk factor, right?
Yeah.
So,
And like, and not every parent like who has a kid. I mean, Logan hasn't been raised religious. Logan hasn't, not particularly religious. Are you frozen, or are you just
no,
waiting?
I'm just waiting
Okay.
for you.
You look so frozen. Logan is we're constantly going back and forth and questioning and talking to him. So like, Logan really isn't as at risk as so many other kids that otherwise, are 10-year-olds who like this, or almost 10-year-olds who like the same things.
And you're a skeptic, so you've raised him with some level of skepticism and thought just by modeling it and just from the conversations you have with him.
Yeah. And like, he spreads it a little bit to his friends. Like, we were taking his friend to the trampoline park with him a couple weeks ago, and his friend was like, "Oh, Panda Express. We should get Panda Express." But he was doing like a very thick, stereotypical Asian accent, and Logan goes, "Hey, why don't we cool it with the racist accents?" And I was like, "I'm so proud of you." Like, and the kid's not thinking it's racist. The kid's just heard somebody else do it.
My son had the opposite. My son was doing an Indian accent. People, you can't do that. And he's like, "But I'm Indian because I'm doing my grandfather's accent."
Yeah.
And he wasn't doing it to be offensive. He was telling a story about his grandfather. He was saying my grandfather, and he just did his voice.
Yeah.
But Madhavi, my wife, who has been on the show before talking about activism, and my daughter Leah have been talking about activism. One of the things they were trying to do at one point, I mean, when they left the organization they handed this project over to someone else who continued to try. I don't know the status of it, though. They were trying to get gun safety information, like safe storage from your children, protecting your guns and your ammo, information to be in PTA packets that went home in the beginning of the year to parents every year in all the packets. Like, just, if you are a gun owner, be aware of the danger. Here's some statistics of dangers of children getting gun, even though when you think it's safe. So here's how to make sure your gun is safe. Here's how to store your bullets separately. Here's how to have a gun lock on your gun, even though your gun is in a gun safe. All these kinds of things. And so they work on that project, and it just occurs to me that I wonder if a mirror of that could be something that could be put together. I mean, I'm sure there are groups that have an educational packet on critical thinking and media literacy. I'm sure that exists, right? I'm sure there are big school systems in big blue states that teach the shit out of that. So I wonder if there's a way to try to get that placed. I would leverage the auspices of Triangle Free Thought Society while we're mainly focused on religion and non-religion and separation of church and state and building community for unbelievers. Skepticism is part of our remit and part of what we looked at. We try to bring in speakers on skepticism and such. So that might be a project that we can try to do in Triangle Free Thought, put together, or just get from some other organization if it already exists, material that could be sent home from the schools, and start working in Wake County first with the school board and see if we can get any headway in making it something that exists. And I think that would be a model for them to move out to other things, and we'll call it the Michael Christopher Cole program.
Yeah, if I that's something I'm really interested in. I would try to talk to Logan's school about it.
Too bad you're not a member anymore.
I will be a member. My debit card just changed. But so that's a great idea. That's my favorite idea.
Yeah, I'm going to try to flesh that out because I think it's something that we could try to do.
I also think that there would not be much resistance if you aimed it correctly. So if you said, like, "Hey, we're aware that your kids are watching YouTube. Like, here's how you can have this discussion with them in case because everybody knows their kid's going to be exposed to some stuff that they don't know about. It doesn't. You can make it non-political. You could be like, you might have heard about. You could use Andrew Tate as an example, or like, there's influences on YouTube that are bad. Here's how we can help talk about that with our kids, and don't make it political, even though Andrew Tate is political.
Okay.
Make it, so that you don't get conservative, right? So you don't get conservatives pushing back. This is how to think, and ultimately,
like I say, use media literacy. Using advertising is a great way to do it. It's saying, look at these ads, and let's use literacy on these ads.
Yeah. Ultimately, I like to joke with. I haven't done it in a while, but I used to joke with my dad, because I'm so politically opposite end of the spectrum. It's like, well, you told me to like think about things, and so
Tell me to do my research. I did, and you're wrong.
this is where I ended up. Like, and so like ultimately, if we help kids, if we help parents, because like I want Logan to be better than me. I want him to be smarter, healthier, happier, all those things than me, and hopefully most parents do. And like, and being media literate is a way that we can make ourselves better and hopefully long term make the world better.
Yeah. And so another thing that I'd bring up quickly, but I won't go into depth about it because it's your expertise and your passion to talk about, and we're running out of time.
Yeah.
Is better mental health in our country, better access to mental health, and better acceptance of mental health. Because the people who would act on the words of other people's rhetoric would motivate them to violence. That's a mental health issue to be able to take that seriously. And we're not good in this country at helping people recognize that they're having problems dealing with reality. And it's a high level of issue. It's not, our typical thing, but it's definitely a thing.
I think I agree with you 80%. I think when you're talking about it, I think that most of this violence is mental health for sure. Mental health is upsetting the balance on this. I do think when you talk about some of this rhetoric and you ingrain it in people, the way like religion, and maybe it's that this is creating a mental health issue, like but like the way religion, like if you believe that someone's going to go to heaven or go to hell if you don't tell them, you feel the obligation to tell them. It's similar when you say like, oh, they're killing Dr. Tiller is killing babies. There is like a moral impulse to be like, well, I need to defend. I need, and that can.
Yeah, I think there's.
So I don't think it's
I think there's something at the point where you think that I am the one who is empowered in this country, not the police, not the FBI, not not a thing. I'm empowered to pick up a gun and go make a difference.
Yeah,
that's
and maybe that's a cognition
thinking,
thing as much. Maybe we've impaired cognition through this mental, through the brainwashing of religion and all these other things, to the point where we've made you so pliable or
the
moldable.
Good guy with a gun narrative is so drilled into your head. I'll be the good guy with a gun. I'm allowed to do it. That's what I've been told. That's why I have a Second Amendment.
And so maybe that's more of a mental ability.
Because I feel like there's some sort of narcissism in there. Narcissism, to think I'm the one who's allowed to do it. I'm self-empowering myself to do it.
All right, so let's start wrapping things up.
Okay. Do I actually have to do a wrap? Okay, here's the situation. You've been watching us when I just got back from vacation. I had a good time, and we're talking about stochastic oration. So what we're going to do is tell you that what you need to do is like this video, leave a comment below, make sure you ring the bell so you will know every time we leave a new one, and then it comes out for you. We're going to have a video from this ex-Christian, ex-Jew. But if you don't like to watch the video scene, you can shove it in your ear hole. Mike will tell you what I mean.
Yeah, give us a like and follow and all that other shit on your podcast app of choice. All the best people are doing that.
At patreon.com/talkingaboutthebigstuff.
And actually, you're right. All good people do that. The best people go to patreon.com/talkingaboutthebigstuff, where they can either give us $0, $1, $3, or $10 a month.
The more dollars, the better a person you are.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's where all the best people are. And you want to be one of the best people, right? Just like nobody wants to be one of the bad people. So like, be a good person and give us money.
You know what? No, it's another good way to give us money. There's not me so much. Maybe next year. We're not right now. But you could give Mike money, and he will give you a book in return. One or two books that he could give you in return.
Yep. We've got my first book, Everything I've Got Left, which is short stories, poems, and essays, and it is $9.99 on my website, michaelchristophercole.com. It's also $9.99 if you buy the digital copy. And then coming out November 4th is The Dinner Party, which is a novel. What a novel idea.
It's a novel because it's just coming out.
Yeah. And it's getting good reviews. I don't know, Matthew, if you saw, but I had a really great review
I've seen
on
video
Thursday
testimonials
or Friday.
on the social webs.
Yeah, and it was kind of blowing up a little bit on Thursday or Friday. I forget which day of the week it was.
It's not even out yet. It's only accidentally out because it was shipped accidentally and getting good reviews.
No. She's an early reviewer that I gave it to. So anyway, so check that out. I think that's.
Yeah, so we'll just wrap up now by saying thank you for sticking with us to the end of this conversation. We appreciate you being around to talk about the big stuff. And if you're a Secret Service agent,
remember, the conversation doesn't end here. It's just the beginning. If you have thoughts or questions or topics you'd like us to tackle in a future episode, drop us a line on our social media channels. Engage with this video when you are now watching it as a VOD on YouTube. Send us an email. We love hearing from our listeners, bringing us topics, because if you leave it up to the three of us, we're going to eventually be talking about underwater basket weaving. So we would appreciate you guys reaching out a little bit. Don't forget to subscribe to Talking About the Big Stuff on your favorite platform. Give us a 5-star rating. Engage with it. Criticize us. We need to grow and be better, and you're going to help us be there. You're going to help us get to that point. It really helps us more to reach out and also to keep the conversation going. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more big ideas and more thought-provoking discussions. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep talking about the big stuff.
The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.